Welcome to Retro Celeb Talk, your gateway to the golden age of fame, where classic Hollywood stories and music legends come alive once more.
The real story behind the headlines, the complex truths hidden just beneath the surface of fame and history. And today, wow, we are opening up a file that really defined Hollywood heartbreak for decades. It's that infamous, incredibly emotional love triangle. Lee Majors, Farrah Fawcett, and Ryan O'Neal. We've been going deep into these excerpts from Hollywood's Golden Triangle, Majors, Fawcett, and O'Neal, and honestly, what they reveal is, it's more than just a timeline. It's this stunning, almost like Shakespearean drama about how overwhelming fame, that sudden rush, can just completely dismantle relationships, even the ones that seem perfect.
That's exactly it. And our mission here really is to get into the psychology of it all. We want to understand why. Why did Lee Majors, this famously private, resilient guy, finally decide at 86 to talk about it? After all that silence, and maybe even more importantly, trace how the conditions lined up, the fame, the distance, those changing ideas about roles in marriage, how all that created this perfect storm for a betrayal that caused, well, 40 years of buried pain.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're listening and you want to really get the specific reasons, the why behind this whole tangled web of love, loyalty, loss, without reading a dozen biographies, then let's just dive right in and unpack this epic Hollywood story right now. Okay, so let's rewind. Let's set the scene properly. We're talking late 60s, early 70s. It's a different world, right? No social media frenzy. TV stars felt like, I don't know, accessible royalty. Lee Majors is already a big deal, established. But then he meets Farrah Fawcett, this young, absolutely stunning woman from Texas.
Yeah.
And the first meeting, well, it wasn't exactly fireworks, was it?
No, not at all. That's one of the really surprising bits from the sources. Farrah's first take on Lee Majors, decidedly cool. She apparently thought he was, quote, a bit rude and not very friendly.
Wow.
Yeah, so you've got the established TV star, maybe a little confident, right? And the aspiring actress. And it sounds like there was this immediate, almost slightly like combative energy, not instant love, which kind of suggests, their connection wasn't just about Hollywood glitz. It was more about Lee being persistent.
Okay, so he kept trying.
He kept trying, and it worked. They started dating, and pretty quickly, within a few years, they became the couple. Everyone knew them.
And the sources talk about their wedding in '73, which, considering how huge they'd become later, was actually really low-key.
Very low-key. July 28th, 1973. Small, private ceremony, Bel Air Hotel, and that detail matters, I think. It shows they started out wanting something normal, something private, away from the craziness that was about to hit them.
Right.
Lee was already the star of The $6 Million Man, a huge hit. And Farrah was, well, the beautiful, supportive wife. They really did embody that sort of 70s aspirational glamour couple.
And it's crucial to understand, too, that Farrah was very intentional about her career early on. She wasn't grabbing every big role she could.
No, she was actively managing it. It fit a very specific, traditional idea. That's the key context, really, for why the marriage eventually fractured. She deliberately slowed things down, took smaller parts, did commercials. The sources explain she genuinely wanted that supportive wife role, which was, pretty common then, focused on home, backing Lee's career.
Well, you liked that.
Oh, yeah. Lee was apparently very protective of her, wanted to shield her from the, let's say, less savory parts of Hollywood. So this dynamic got set up, powerful, protective husband, dependent wife, but it turned out to be fragile.
Because then came 1976.
Yeah.
And that whole carefully built life just went up in flames. This is where Farrah doesn't just become famous, she becomes this massive cultural force, supernova.
It was like a switch flipped, instantaneous, overwhelming. She gets cast as Jill Monroe in Charlie's Angels. Okay, big deal.
Yeah.
But the real phenomenon, the thing you absolutely cannot overstate, was that red swimsuit poster.
Oh, that poster, yeah.
It wasn't just popular, it sold millions all over the world. It cemented her. She wasn't just a TV star anymore, she was the icon of the decade. Planetary fame. And the hair, the Farrah do. That hairstyle alone became like a whole cultural moment.
And this is right where the cracks start showing up psychologically.
Yeah.
Because the scale of fame was so mismatched, so sudden, that intense, rapid celebrity just immediately shattered the traditional marriage structure they'd built so carefully.
It created an impossible situation almost overnight. Their schedules, forget about it, total clash. And the physical distance they suddenly had, it became like a metaphor for the emotional distance growing between them. You look at Lee Majors' interviews later, the ones in the sources, and there's this one quote that's just, It's heartbreaking.
Right.
Majors admitted there was an entire year where he only saw Farrah twice.
Twice in a whole year.
Twice in 365 days.
Just try to imagine that. Maintaining this image, this golden couple thing for the public, while dealing with that kind of absence privately, you're right, the fame wasn't just pulling them apart, it became this huge, suffocating third person in the marriage.
And the media attention just poured gasoline on the fire. Paparazzi everywhere, constant press coverage. So even the rare private moments they might have had felt public, dissected. It made that emotional separation, which was already happening because of logistics, feel, I don't know, absolute, final, unescapable. That marriage, the one based on that 70s model of domestic stability, it just couldn't hold up under the sheer weight of Farrah's global fame. It became totally unsustainable.
Okay, so as we're moving through the mid to late 70s, what we're seeing isn't necessarily malice causing the split, right? It's transformation. Farrah's evolving, she's becoming this independent power player, and that's a change Lee seemed, well, maybe psychologically unprepared for.
It's such a classic Hollywood story, isn't it? The sort of male ego struggling when the female partner's career takes off. Farrah had found her own strength, her own agency. The sources are really clear. She wasn't defining herself just by being Lee's wife or by that domestic life anymore. She was growing into this incredibly successful independent star. She had her own career path, her own money, freedom.
And that became the core tension, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Lee, kind of reflecting the attitudes of the time, expected his wife to be, well, dependent. He was the leading man, the provider, the protector in that dynamic they started with. But then he found it almost impossible to sort of recalibrate, to adjust his own identity, their relationship, to fit this new reality where his wife was suddenly, arguably, the bigger star.
And the sources show how tough this was for both of them, actually. It wasn't just Lee struggling. Farrah was genuinely torn. There's a really touching anecdote in the material. Farrah apparently confessed feeling sad that she couldn't quite be that dependent stay-at-home wife Lee seemed to want.
Really?
Yeah, even though she still cared for him deeply. And she apparently still liked cooking for him when she actually had the chance, which wasn't often. She felt that pull of the traditional role, you know? But the pull of her own independence, her own career was just stronger. Magnetic.
That internal conflict really shows the difference between loving someone and actually being compatible long-term, doesn't it? By 1979, whatever affection might have still been there, the emotional distance was just too vast. They couldn't keep up the illusion anymore.
Correct. I mean, legally married, yes. But in reality, they were living totally separate lives by then. So the public announcement of their separation in 1979, Farrah was 32. That was a huge deal, a major public statement. She moved out of their big Bel Air mansion. And the sources say she felt this mix of things: confusion, definitely fear about the future, but also this overwhelming relief at just being done with pretending everything was okay when it clearly wasn't.
And that separation, boom, it just lights the fuse for a media frenzy, right?
Yeah.
Their private pain becomes this enormous public spectacle. The gossip magazines must have had an absolute field day.
Oh, completely wild, unverified rumors flying everywhere, fights, affairs, just general misery, constant speculation.
Did this public stuff affect their careers too?
Yeah, absolutely. There are real professional consequences. Farrah left Charlie's Angels after just one season. Now, partly that was contract stuff, sure, but fundamentally it was also about her wanting total freedom, personally and professionally, freedom from those expectations. She wanted to decide her own next move.
And Lee.
While at the same time, Lee's career after $6 Million Man ended, the projects he took on weren't quite hitting the same highs, less successful. So you've got added financial pressure, professional stress, on top of the emotional agony of the separation. It was a tough time for him too.
Just this slow, painful, very public dismantling of what everyone thought was Hollywood perfection.
Yeah.
The divorce itself didn't actually finalize until 1982, right? 3 years after they separated publicly.
That's right, a long time.
But that whole period, the separation, the stress, the career shifts, it raises a really important question about loyalty, about trust. Who stuck around? Who was in their circle? Because the answer to that leads us straight into the absolute core trauma of this entire story.
It really makes you think about how fickle Hollywood friendships can be, doesn't it? When a power couple like that splits, loyalties get tested, social circles get ripped apart. Lee and Farrah knew a lot of the same people. And the sources suggest Lee was leaning pretty heavily on those established friendships during that really painful, isolating time. But unfortunately, the void left by Farrah finding her independence and maybe Lee being absent or unable to connect in the way she needed, well, that void was about to be filled. And filled by someone Lee trusted completely, implicitly.
Okay, this part of the deep dive. It just feels like the cruelest possible twist. And the irony of how it all happened is just brutal. Lee Majors and Ryan O'Neal. They weren't just acquaintances, they were longtime friends, same Hollywood circles, knew each other for years, they had history.
Exactly. And that shared history is what makes the betrayal cut so deep. This wasn't some random guy. The sources pinpoint the exact moment it all started. It's 1979, right around the time the separation is becoming real, and it happens because of this chance meeting in Toronto.
It sounds almost too coincidental, like something out of a movie script. Ryan O'Neal is up there visiting his daughter Tatum.
Right.
And Tatum, just by chance, bumps into Lee Majors and introduces herself. Lee's surprised Ryan's even in town. They connect, call each other up.
And they end up catching the same flight back to Los Angeles. Just a simple, friendly travel buddy situation, right?
Seems innocent enough.
So they land in LA. And Lee, maybe he's feeling a bit lonely after the flight, maybe just extending that courtesy you do for an old friend, invites Ryan over to his place for dinner.
Okay.
And this dinner is where Ryan first meets Farrah. And Ryan's reaction, according to the source material, was immediate, intense captivation. He described her as just incredibly beautiful, warm, said she had this appealing, childlike kindness. He was completely charmed right away.
But here's the pivot, right? The moment that just changes everything. It's heartbreaking, dramatic irony. Lee has to go back to Canada almost straight away for filming.
He does. And this is where his trust, maybe mixed with, I don't know, a bit of denial about how final the split with Farrah really was. This is where it leads him down a terrible path.
He asks Ryan.
He asks Ryan O'Neal, his longtime friend, quote, take care of Farrah while he's gone.
Oh, Lee, no.
Yeah. He apparently genuinely worried she'd be lonely. He thought having a friend around would be, comforting for her during the separation. It sounds like it came from a place of real, lingering care for Farrah, ironically.
It's just a staggering example of misplaced trust. Just, wow.
And what started as this, innocent, maybe deeply unwise, but supposedly friendly arrangement, it turned into something else very, very quickly. That connection between Ryan and Farrah became profound, emotionally and physically, almost immediately.
So the void Lee left by being away, maybe by not being able to connect with the new, independent Farrah. Ryan just stepped right into it.
He stepped right in. And Ryan, remember, had this reputation in Hollywood, a known womanizer. But with Farrah, he apparently got serious. Fast. This wasn't just a fling. The betrayal wasn't something that simmered. It was quick and direct. Eventually, Ryan actually told Lee, broke the news to him.
How did that go down?
He apparently just stated it bluntly that he really loved her.
To Lee, his friend.
Lee, his friend. Lee was, as you'd expect, completely shocked, devastated, incredibly hurt. And he asked Ryan, begged him really to back off. Ended immediately.
But it was too late by then.
Way too late. The relationship was already solidifying. And the sources really emphasized that the pain for Lee wasn't just one thing. It wasn't just the final nail in the coffin of his marriage to Farrah, as painful as that was. It was the profound sense of being betrayed by a close friend, that disloyalty.
It changes the whole story, doesn't it? From a sad divorce to this catastrophic personal betrayal.
It guaranteed the scar would be deeper, more permanent. And Farrah and Ryan's relationship just blossomed from there. They had their son, Redmond, in 1985. They were together for decades, on and off. Farrah often called Ryan the love of her life.
And for Lee.
For Lee, the emotional fallout was just confirmation, maybe, that fame hadn't just cost him his wife and the future he'd imagined. It had also cost him his trust in his closest friends.
It really is the ultimate Hollywood tragedy in a way. A triple loss. The wife, the life plan, and the friend. So the sources are really clear on this. The news about Farrah and Ryan, it hit Lee Majors like a storm. That's the word used. It wasn't just sadness. It was this profound, almost paralyzing trauma. Betrayal trauma shook him right to his core. And yet, his public response, nothing. Silence. This incredibly dignified, absolute silence that went on for over 40 years.
Yeah, the depth of that pain really dictated his response. For Lee, this loss wasn't just about Farrah the person. It was the loss of, quote, the life he had imagined, the whole picture, the home, the future they'd planned, everything they were building together. He felt the destruction of that entire vision just as deeply as he felt the betrayal by Ryan.
But why silence? I mean, especially in Hollywood. Usually the instinct is to fight back.
Yeah.
Control the narrative, get your side out, maybe get some public sympathy. Lee did the exact opposite. He just completely withdrew from the topic.
It seems like it was a very conscious choice. A strategy almost based on dignity and self-preservation. First, talking about it publicly, just too painful. Imagine constantly having to relive that betrayal in interviews. It would make healing impossible.
True.
Second, and this really says something about his character, I think he didn't want to feed the gossip machine. He wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. His silence was this quiet way of showing respect, maybe, for Farrah's image and eventually her memory. He refused to drag her personal life, however complicated, through the mud just for headlines.
So you could argue his resilience was actually built on carrying that pain privately. It definitely shaped his public image over the years.
Yeah.
He became known as reserved, thoughtful, the guy who handled this immense personal loss without any public drama or complaint.
Absolutely. That silence became, maybe unintentionally, a sign of strength. The press hounded him about it for years, especially in the 80s, but Majors just consistently refused to give them the soundbite they craved. And that protected him, kept him from more emotional damage, and let him keep his dignity in an industry that often thrives on exploitation.
And we see that dedication to keeping it private, that dignified grief, really clearly when Farrah passed away in June 2009. The media attention around her death was enormous.
It was huge. Her death brought that whole history, the love, the fame, the betrayal, right back into the spotlight, intense focus.
Yet Majors stayed quiet.
Maintained his privacy completely. He didn't go to the funeral, didn't release any public statements. Sources close to him at the time confirmed what many suspected. Reopening that incredibly painful chapter, even just for a final goodbye, would simply have been, quote, too difficult.
Wow, even after all those years.
The original wound, though decades old, was still just too raw. His silence then wasn't indifference. It was proof of how long that pain lasted.
But time changes things, doesn't it? The calculation shifts. And this is the big reveal, the thing that really sparked this whole deep dive. Majors, at 86 years old, finally chose to break that silence. Decades later.
He did. And it seems like he chose to speak not to, like settle old scores or anything like that. It felt more like sharing his truth, maybe finally finding some peace with it all. In this really heartfelt interview, the one documented in our source material, he talked honestly about the heartbreak, the betrayal. He admitted how incredibly difficult it was to trust anyone after that, how hard it was to let go of the pain. He was finally sharing feelings he'd kept locked away for nearly half a century.
And what's really fascinating about his perspective now, after all this time, is the nuance, right? He wasn't just pointing fingers. He seemed to express some understanding about how complicated love is, the forces that pull them apart. He wasn't just blaming Ryan or even Farrah entirely, but he also admitted he never ever forgot the depth of that loss.
Precisely. His decision to finally speak, especially at 86, it highlights that the silence was never about pretending it didn't happen. It was about processing it. When he finally told his side, it confirmed that the mark left by that love and that loss was so deep, it maybe required the perspective of old age to really analyze it safely and share it. And notably, he spoke out years after Ryan O'Neal had passed away, which meant the focus could be purely on his own emotional journey, without reigniting immediate controversy or back and forth. It felt like a powerful act of personal closure, and honestly, a testament to immense inner strength.
Okay, let's shift focus now to Farrah Fawcett's final chapter, which was incredibly courageous, but also, ironically, involved her doing the exact opposite of what Lee Majors did for decades. She rejected privacy. She faced her final health battle with this profound, very public vulnerability.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast. Farrah's battle started publicly in 2006. She was diagnosed with anal cancer at 58, and she fought it head-on with this remarkable toughness, intense treatments, chemo, radiation. She even pursued alternative treatments overseas. There was this brief moment of hope in 2007. She actually achieved remission, was declared cancer-free right around her 60th birthday.
But that hope, that victory, was tragically temporary, and that led her to make this really critical, brave decision about sharing her experience.
Right, the cancer came back, and sadly, it metastasized, spread to her liver. But instead of retreating from the public eye, which would have been totally understandable, Farrah chose to document the agonizing reality of her illness. That became the documentary, Farrah's Story. It was filmed with her close friend, Alana Stewart, and it ended up getting Emmy-nominated.
And this choice to show the raw, often really painful side of cancer, it's such a complete flip from the effortless glamour she became famous for, isn't it? What was her reason for doing that?
Yeah. Her motivation, she said, was explicitly to show the truth behind the celebrity image. She wanted to raise awareness, yes, but also to strip away that artificial gloss that often surrounds celebrity illness. She wanted to show the real human struggle involved in fighting that disease. The documentary aired not long before she died, and it's still incredibly powerful, very raw viewing.
And in her final days, the sources say her main focus wasn't really on her fame or even her past relationships anymore. It was primarily on her son, Redmond O'Neill.
That's such a heartbreaking detail, isn't it? Friends reported she was just deeply, constantly worried about Redmond. He was going through his own profound struggles with addiction, facing legal troubles, all while she was so ill. It really underscores the lasting, complex emotional ties of her life with Ryan O'Neill and the pain of those shared family difficulties.
Farrah died peacefully on June 25, 2009. She was 62, and Ryan O'Neill was right there holding her hand until the very end. Which kind of confirms that despite everything, all the drama, the betrayal, the breakups, the public scrutiny, their bond, in some fundamental way, really did endure.
He was very publicly, and apparently privately, devoted to her during those last years. He himself passed away much later, in late 2023. But even after Farrah's death, the complications tied to her fame continued. Her estate, particularly her valuable art collection, she had some significant Andy Warhol pieces that became the subject of legal fights years later.
Wow.
It just proves that the complexities of fame, money, and relationships often echo long after someone is gone.
So ultimately, Farrah's legacy is kind of contradictory, isn't it? She's still that timeless symbol of 70s beauty, the iconic Farrah do, everyone remembers that. But her final years revealed this other side. A woman of incredible strength, resilience, who chose vulnerability over keeping up appearances.
Exactly, and the story of all three of them, Lee Majors, Farrah Fawcett, Ryan O'Neill, it serves as this incredibly powerful, really detailed case study. It just proves that behind even most glamorous Hollywood myths, you find these deeply human relationships, fragile expectations, incredibly complex emotions. And those emotions resonate much longer, much deeper than any fleeting moment of fame. Hashtag Tech conclusion. So, we've traced the whole arc, haven't we? The seemingly perfect traditional start, then the absolutely destructive power of sudden, massive fame. We saw the specific, painful way the betrayal by a friend happened, and then Lee Majors' incredible resilience shown through those decades of determined silence. The high price of fame here wasn't just a marriage ending, it fundamentally changed the lives, the emotional landscape of everyone involved.
And I think the key takeaway from Majors finally speaking out at 86 is so important. It wasn't about getting revenge or setting the record straight publicly. It felt much more like an act of personal reckoning, historical reckoning for himself. His silence was maybe an attempt to control the pain, contain it, and his eventual words were an attempt to finally complete the healing process.
Right. His story gives us this unique look into different ways people cope under extreme pressure. Lee chose dignity through private endurance, protecting himself, yes, but also protecting Farrah's memory from the tabloids. Farrah, on the other hand, chose that raw vulnerability in her final years to document her own truth. Both paths, though completely different, seem motivated by this desire for authenticity in the face of overwhelming circumstances.
So we'll leave you, the listener, with this final thought to mull over. What really shows greater strength? Is it facing a public scandal head-on, fighting back immediately, trying to control the story as it breaks? Or is it carrying the immense weight of a deep private betrayal for decades? Choosing to protect it, bear it with dignity, mostly alone, until you find your own time for peace. How does all that time passing truly change how we understand celebrity heartbreak, especially when the private pain lasts so much longer than the public headlines? That brings us to the end of this deep dive into the incredibly complex emotional history of Lee Majors, Farrah Fawcett, and Ryan O'Neill. If you found this story moving, if it gave you some new insights, or helped you understand the sources we talked about today a bit better, we'd love for you to engage with us here at the Retro Celeb Talk community. Please do like this video, share it with any friends you know who appreciate digging into the untold truths behind some of Hollywood's biggest stories. And definitely comment below with your thoughts. We really want to hear what you think, especially about Majors' decades of silence. Was it strength? Was it something else? Let us know. And of course, please don't forget to subscribe to the Retro Celeb Talk YouTube channel. We've got many more deep dives coming your way into fascinating lives and the secrets they held. Thanks so much for joining us.